They waited for fog and mud. A nano-carbon raft slid across a black canal. No radios, just fiber lines, 5 meters long, sealed from jamming. On the ridge, S-400 arrays woke to a swarm that wasn't there. And under that chaos, a Javelin locked a target, carrying a quiet tweak, 1.1 seconds. This is the story of a phantom raid that claims to have collapsed a supply chain. We'll walk the three-part cycle: deceive, cut command, then empty the magazine, and ask, could timing, not tonnage, do all that? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Fog, mud, and a canal weren't obstacles. They were tools. Clear nights help guards and cameras. Fog dulls infrared, mud slows vehicles, and cold water swallows sound. They waited for all three because the depot's shield wasn't a wall. It was a mesh of sensors that punished anything warm, loud, or talkative. The objective was simple to state and brutal to execute. Get within striking distance of a hardened depot ringed by S-400 arrays and electronic warfare without lighting up on radio, thermal, or acoustic alarms. The team didn't just need to arrive. They needed to arrive as a statistical anomaly, low, cold, and quiet enough to blend into background noise. Radios were off. Near-layered EW, a transmission, is a flare. Standard quadcopters glow on thermal like stovetops. Ground patrols moved on 20-minute loops with dogs and handheld thermal optics, cutting lanes across culverts and scrub. So how do you move, see, and coordinate when the air hates signals and the ground punishes heat? You break movement into parts: drift, crawl, pause, and verify without broadcasting. The answer started with mobility that didn't look like movement to a machine. Each man handled a 30-pound nano-carbon raft that could slide at a walking pace. Under wet canvas, the raft threw almost no wake and shed little heat. The low profile let it skim along reeds and concrete margins without drawing a line on radar. A push-pole and a gloved hand did more than any motor. No cavitation, no whine, no spray. The mud on the canvas wasn't grime. It was a blanket, dropping the surface temperature below the reeds nearby. Seeing without shouting meant drones, but not the kind that talk. Operators ran custom FPV units on 5-meter fiber optic tethers. The control loop was hardwired and closed, which meant no emissions to jam and no data link to triangulate per one. The pilot's hand spoke down the fiber. The drone answered in return, all through a thread thinner than a shoelace. 5 meters was enough to peek around a berm or lift over a culvert, then drop back under the thermal horizon. The cable curled in the grass like a root, invisible to spectrum scanners and passive pickets. To draw the eye away, they salted the slope with GPS beacon decoys, small Hera devices that pulsed a false signature set, simulating a phantom swarm moving upslope. The S-400 search radar had to look. A ghost mass on the board is still a mass, and doctrine says you investigate. When the array panned to track the ghosts, it created a blind rhythm on the opposite arc. The defenders had countermeasures. The team answered with countermeasures. Biosmoke canisters bled a cold plume that flattened thermal contrast, turning people into smudges against wet earth. Along the likely sweep lines, they laid decoy cables that would snag patrols and draw thermal sweeps toward the hills instead of the canal. Every distraction bought seconds. Every second let mud and water pull body heat down another degree. A patrol clinked past, boots crunching in frozen ruts. The radar truck slewed toward the false swarm, its dish tracking ghosts up the ridge. In that moment, a drainage ditch turned into a corridor. The thermal window opened, a thin lane where the temperature gradient narrowed enough to hide a raft-shaped blur. They slid, dipped, and halted on whispered counts. The fiber drones nosed forward and tucked back. No radio clicks, no idle buzzing, only wet canvas and breath control. They breached the radar fence by behaving like weather. Emissions stayed dark. Fiber-tethered control kept eyes ahead without announcing a presence. Fog and mud did the rest, close enough to laze a command and control vehicle and not wake wide-area sensors. The team put a dot where a brain lived. Getting close was survival. Making the depot destroy itself would depend on what the missile did a heartbeat after it broke skin. A fraction of a second decides whether a blast slaps a wall or blooms inside it. In a steel and concrete bunker stacked with munitions, that choice rewires the outcome. The team marked the depot's brain and didn't ask for fireworks outside. They needed the strike to walk in like a thief and lock the door behind it. External detonations burn paint and rattle hinges. Internal detonations turn rooms into tools. The depot's command vehicle sat next to hardened vaults, and both had layers built to peel energy away. The plan aimed to defeat those layers, not by brute force, but by timing the burn so the main pressure formed where air could not escape. Standard top attack hits hard, but layered barriers punish predictable fuse. A warhead that triggers on first contact gives the bunker what it wants: energy spent on the surface. Air defenses were still shifting after the ghost raid. The window was short and the return fire loop was tightening. Miss the sequence and the vault shrug. Hit too early and the control racks keep breathing. The answer was a programmed pause long enough for the warhead to slip past the first bite of steel and concrete, then wake up inside the volume that mattered. They fired a GPS-guided Javelin with a 1.1 second delay built into its detonation logic. That pause was not theater. It was a measured path length. The missile's shaped charge jet cut a hole, but the main event waited. The fuse told the explosive to hold its breath as the follow-through mass rode the cut, then step into the interior before firing. At that point, the room itself became part of the weapon. The charge didn't waste energy making a crater. It spent it filling space with pressure fast enough to leave nowhere for it to go. Inside a sealed compartment, overpressure acts like a ricochet. Waves reflect off plates, reinforcing into a spike that exceeds the raw yield. Edges and corners fold energy back on itself. Anything that vents becomes a nozzle. Anything that burns becomes a booster. Fuel lines rupture, propellant crates flash, lithium cells in drone racks torch and feed heat back into the wave. The first microsecond rattles metal. The next few pack the room tighter than lungs can tolerate. There is no slow leak, only rebound and collapse. The system effect stacks quickly. The C2 vehicle's power racks, data links, and switchboards sit in trays and conduits built for airflow, not blast flow. Cables whip, boards flex and snap. The interface between clean power and radios goes dirty. Across the short gap, the hardened vaults don't all go high order at once, but sympathetic cook-off starts like a series of coughs. Each flare lifts temperature, each pop eats oxygen. It doesn't take total demolition to blind a radar array. It takes removing the coordinator that keeps search, track, and fire control in a single rhythm. When that brain stutters, gaps open. Those gaps invited the next wave. FPV units fanned in from low angles and strange arcs, not to duel, but to cut. One team used decoys to throw up false lines of approach and pulled counterfire toward empty sky. A sacrificial drone took a hard lock and ate it. The warhead carriers slid in close and sheared the gravestone radar panels, then drove charges into vent shafts and cooling trunks. They weren't hunting spectacular blasts. They were removing lungs and eyes so the larger system suffocated under its own confusion. That 1.1 second delay turned one missile into a lever. By shifting where detonation happened, it amplified the blast's effect and helped trigger chain reactions that traveled through storage, wiring, and fuel. If the timing worked the way the team claims, the footprint wouldn't stop at the fence. It would show up in empty radio nets, missing dispatches, and a front line that waited for shells that never left the depot. A micro-choice can outweigh a barrage. Where a detonation happens in time and space decides whether defenses bend or break. That's the edge. One delay, one spoofed signal, one silent approach shifts outcomes more than heavier fire from miles away.